You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Packers Talk.
You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Tehan. In addition to this show, I write for the PackersPost.com and Cheesehead TV, and Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. Sean, a nice win last week for the Packers, a much-needed win. And now heading on the road to Tennessee to take on the Titans. But first, how about a word from our sponsor?
Yeah, you mentioned they're going on the road to Tennessee this weekend. They'll be back in Wisconsin in a couple of weeks. And a few words about our own sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packer fans, so you can get ready for another Packer home game in a few weeks, or if you're going to Nashville this weekend for their game against the Titans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. And if you're watching with us on YouTube, Facebook, if you're watching us live, thank you for tuning in. Subscribe to us. Tell your friends, tell your folks, tell your enemies. I don't care who you tell. Get them to, if they like Packer content, we're the place to come to. You'll see the link right there on your screen to get access to Packer game tickets in a pinch if need be. Wisconsin's own Ticket King. And Gil, yeah, hey, home opener. It was it was a slugfest. It ended up being a slugfest in the end, but man, the Packers. It was really an impressive win without QB1 out there.
Yeah, it was, and I tell you, I give a lot of credit to Josh Jacobs, to Malik Willis, to the offensive line, and how about Matt LaFleur? What a great game he called, especially in the first half. You knew going into this game they were going to run and run and run, and yet those first scripted plays, how many different fakes, how many different types of handoffs did he make, how many different blocking schemes, the jet sweeps, the end arounds, the fakes one way, the fakes the other way. And, by halftime, Josh Jacobs already had like a great game, even if he didn't do anything the rest of the way, because he was just dominating out there.
The offense in the first half had 237 rushing yards, and it was just Matt LaFleur reaching deep into his bag and pulling out all the stops. He was creative. He's been lauded as a very creative play designer, play caller, and it was on full display in that game against the Colts. Now, Josh Jacobs, he had a great game. He had that goal line fumble where it was about to be 17-0. Luckily, that didn't play a factor in the end, and the Packers weren't snake bit by that miscue at the goal line. But outside of that, just so dominant. I mean, the Colts knew the run was coming most of the time, and the Packers held onto the ball for more than 40 minutes. 40 minutes and 11 seconds. That's the recipe to winning any game. I don't care if you got Jordan Love. I don't care if you got Malik Willis. I don't care if you got old man Don Mikowski out there. The Packers, you can win with anybody when you're holding onto the ball for more than 40 minutes a game. And I feel like, too, if this was Mike McCarthy, I don't mean to slam Mike McCarthy, but Mike McCarthy, when Aaron Rodgers was down, he had a backup quarterback in the situation that Matt LaFleur was in. It would have been a much worse situation. Matt LaFleur knew how to adapt. He adapted quickly. He knew how to adapt a game plan that was great for the personnel and the talent that he had, and he delivered with a big win that the Packers definitely needed.
And it was great to see. And look, kudos also to Malik Willis. He's been on the roster 19 days to learn the terminology and the playbook and to adjust to new teammates and all of that, and then be put there in the home opener in front of a sold-out crowd when your team is already 0-1. No pressure, right? No pressure at all. Yeah. He was, look, was he dominant? No. But was he super efficient and mistake-free? Yes, he was. And that is what the team needed him to do. He did it. And this is the kind of thing where he can grow from a game like this and gain confidence. The team can gain confidence in him. And hopefully this is the first step in his development as an NFL quarterback.
nothing seemed to rattle or faze Malik Willis. Even Josh Myers puking on the football during the game didn't faze him at all, which was unbelievable. If you haven't seen the video online, I recommend Googling it, whatever you do. Josh Myers puked on the ball 2 plays in a row, and Malik Willis and Josh Jacobs had to hold on to that football as well, which is just disgusting in itself. But even that couldn't rattle Malik Willis. And you got to give props to the defense as well. The rush defense wasn't great. Still a lot of things to fix up there. They had some issues with Jonathan Taylor, but man, did they fluster Anthony Richardson. 3 interceptions tallied by the defense. 5 interceptions on the season. Now they had 7 all of last year under Joe Barry when he was coordinating the defense. They're creating havoc. They're reacting to the ball, reacting to plays quicker. And I want to give also a special shout out to Eric Wilson too. Man, that guy didn't play many snaps, but when he's on defense and when he's out there, he just does his job, and he does it well. He had that huge tackle for loss on 3rd and 1 that made it a 4th and 5, forced into a deep field goal attempt that they end up missing. He had an interception off of Anthony Richardson, the second that Richardson threw in that game. 2 massive plays that really tilted the Packers' odds in a good way and helped the Packers get a win. Eric Wilson doesn't make those plays. I don't know if the Packers, if we're talking about a win against the Colts on Sunday.
Yeah, kudos to Eric Wilson coming up big. Congratulations to Evan Williams on his first NFL interception.
Mm-hmm.
How about the X-Man? 2 picks in 2 games for Xavier McKinney. Gotta love what he's been able to do. The safety position going from a major question mark all year last year to a strength already in 2 games, and Xavier McKinney, a huge reason for that turnaround.
Yeah, what a presence to have. I still can't believe the New York Giants let him walk. And Saquon Barkley too, but hey, the Giants, their trash is our reward, and it's like Xavier McKinney's far from trash. That's a gold mine that just happened to end up at 1265 Lombardi Avenue. But obviously the Packers, though, they didn't have Jordan Love in that first game, in that home opener against the Colts. And Love, he did return to practice, luckily. He had the MCL sprain, obviously, in the opener in Brazil. Didn't practice at all leading up to the Colts game. He did return to practice in a limited fashion on Wednesday. Gil, this is good news for the Packers.
Yeah, and again, this doesn't guarantee that he's going to play on Sunday. I think the Packers would be wise, unless he's really, really ready to go. When in doubt, hold him back. You already won a game without him. I would wait 1 more week if possible, but having him return to practice is a positive sign. And I love Matt LaFleur, who just said he's limited. You can infer what you wish about that. So, he could have gone out there, taken 2 snaps and walked away, and that would be like, okay, he was there. He was limited. Or it could mean he was running a lot of different drills. So we don't know the specifics at this point, but at least he's getting back out there, and these are the first steps toward his return.
And obviously online, there was video of Love participating in practice, but the media only gets to see practice for so long. So he could have just been doing individual drills, just some minor drills, and then didn't participate in team drills or whatever the case may be. We just know that he was there. He was actually present. He was there, which is definitely a good sign going forward. Now, ESPN's Rob Demovsky, there was a lot of reports about how Love, it was gamesmanship by the Packers, just trying to keep the Colts on their toes and just prepare for Jordan, with the thought of preparing for Jordan Love. But Rob Demovsky said on ESPN Radio, I believe, that Love possibly returning to that home opener on Sunday was no charade. He was close. And that gives me optimism as a Packer fan that this is not going to be a very long-term injury. Maybe we see him against the Titans on Sunday. But I will say this, Gil, when we were talking here last week and we were talking about going into week 2, you got to split one of the next 2 games. They got 1 win already. I want to see Love come back, but it's still September. If he's 100%, roll him out there. But if not, if there's still room for him to get a little healthier, a little more, a little fresher, not as dinged up, and reduce those bumps and bruises and that sprain, don't play him. Don't play him. It's still right. September. If this is November, December, I totally change my tune. But this is September football. We got a lot of football still left after this weekend. That's just kind of my take on it.
And to take it a step further, we're facing an AFC team, the Tennessee Titans. Wait 1 more week, you've got a division game against the Minnesota Vikings, who, by the way, even though I don't think they're an elite team, they are 2-0. So I would rather have Jordan Love a little healthier and ready to go next week against the Vikings. I don't want to lose to the Tennessee Titans, but if I had a choice, I would concentrate my efforts on beating the Vikings over the Titans.
And the Packers, traditionally, their medical staff is overly conservative, especially when it comes to the quarterback. Multiple times we thought Aaron Rodgers, when he was dealing with his collarbone issues in the past, where we thought he'd be coming back a week or two earlier than he did. And the Packers just kept holding him out because, hey, it's long-term safety, long-term health is better than the short-term. And that's what the Packers are going to look at with Jordan Love. I hope we see him on Sunday, but if not, I totally understand. It's just a matter of it's in the medical staff's hands, and I trust them to make the right decision regarding Jordan Love. Now, some other injury news, unfortunately, rookie running back Marshawn Lloyd, he was placed on the injured reserve list. Lloyd had 5 carries. He had a catch in that home opener against the Colts. This is a guy who's had so much bad injury luck, Gil, where he opened camp with a hip issue. Then he had a hamstring issue that he suffered in Cleveland in the preseason opener. And now he's dealing with an ankle issue. It's head, shoulders, knees, and toes when it comes to injuries for Marshawn Lloyd. This is it's a bummer because you could see there's little flashes where you could see why the Packers are so high on Marshawn Lloyd. He's just got to play.
Yeah, but he's going to miss at least 4 games now as a result of being placed on IR. Look, if they can get Marshawn Lloyd healthy for the second half of this season, that's like adding, a little jolt to the roster come the second half. That's when, all the carries that the other running backs, whether it's Emmanuel Wilson or obviously Josh Jacobs, so they start to wear down come November and December, and you have a fresh Marshawn Lloyd to put into the lineup. He could do some real damage, but you just hope it's nothing long-term and that his rookie season doesn't become a wash as a result of the injury.
It's nice to have a bell cow back like Josh Jacobs. No disrespect to Aaron Jones, but Josh Jacobs carried the ball 32 times in that home opener. I don't know if Aaron Jones would have hit 25 in that situation on Sunday against the Colts. Josh Jacobs can carry a load. He's done quite a bit in his career with the Raiders, and he's doing quite a bit right now to open the season. He's the 3rd leading rusher in football right now. He's doing something right, and the sky's the limit kind of for this offense if Josh Jacobs is running like that. Marshawn Lloyd, though, obviously on IR, so he is not part of the 53-man roster as of now. Running back Chris Brooks was promoted to the 53-man roster. He spent his rookie year with the Miami Dolphins last year, had 19 carries for 106 yards in 4 games with the Dolphins. And then wide receiver Cornelius Johnson from Gil's alma mater, Michigan, was signed to the practice squad. Big receiver there for the Green Bay Packers, 6'3", 208. He's a big guy. He was a 7th-round pick of the Chargers, of the LA Chargers, was cut after training camp, was hanging out on the street, and now he's signed to the Packers practice squad. Some other injury news and notes as well. A few other guys who did not participate for the Packers in practice on Wednesday. Elton Jenkins, who's dealing with an illness and a glute. Offensive lineman and rookie Jordan Morgan dealing with a shoulder issue. Wide receiver Jaden Reed dealing with a calf problem. He was questionable for Sunday's game against the Colts. And quarterback Carrington Valentine dealing with an ankle issue, guy who was dealing with hamstring problems during preseason. Gil, if you could afford to lose one of these guys, who could we afford to lose? But overall, actually, who do we need more out of this group if someone's not going to go? What causes you to worry as a Packer fan?
I don't want to lose any of them, but to me, Elton Jenkins is so important to that offensive line, and I don't want him to be missing any time. To me, he's versatile. He is important. He's a veteran presence next to the inexperienced Rasheed Walker. I really want Elton Jenkins ready to go. But look, Jaden Reed has been so good this year, and Carrington Valentine had a really strong game against the Colts last week. So I don't want to lose any of them, but to me, Jenkins would be the toughest to lose.
I think it's more so Jenkins and Morgan. I feel like those are the guys you need to have because the O-line depth is limited. Jaden Reed, I want to see him out there. Carrington Valentine is a dog on the corner. I love all these guys, but there's a lot of depth at corner. There's a lot of depth at receiver for the Packers. I feel a little better in those areas when it comes to depth as opposed to the offensive line. Some other injury news and notes. Limited in practice on Wednesday. Kenny Clark dealing with a toe. Josh Jacobs dealing with a back. Tucker Kraft dealing with a shoulder, Zach Tom dealing with a quad, Rasheed Walker with a shoulder, Josh Myers with an ankle, and Kingsley Enagbare with a groin. Matt LaFleur did say for Josh Jacobs, it's no concern. And it sounds like, too, when he spoke to the media on Wednesday, it's a lot of recovery right now in this first practice of the week for the Green Bay Packers.
And Josh Myers, no stomach issues?
I don't think so. I don't think he's hacking anything up right now. So that's you got to think he seems like a very well-liked guy in that locker room.
Yes,
he probably got a good ribbing later, especially after a win when everyone's in a much better mood and less hopefully sick. And hopefully he whatever it was bothering him, hopefully he didn't pass that along to Elton Jenkins. I mean, Elton Jenkins does play right next to him. He's doing the nose. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying, So, but speaking of Elton Jenkins, Gil, let's talk about the Packers offense against the Tennessee defense. Packers coming into this game, they are the 5th ranked total offense in football. Tennessee's defense, well, they're the 1st ranked total defense. The Packers are scoring 22.5 points per game. That's 13th in the league. They're 18th in passing yards. Big deal with that is obviously Jordan Love not having for game 2. They lead the league in rushing, 212 rushing yards per game. That's 1st right now in the NFL. Tennessee's defense, they are allowing 24 points per game, which is tied for 9th worst, but they have the top-rated pass defense, the 10th rated rush defense. The points per game is a little skewed because that opening loss against the Chicago Bears, 14 of those points were because of an offensive turnover and a special teams block punt. So this Tennessee defense is good. Gil, dwindling it down, though, what's the matchup you're looking forward to between the Packers offense and the Titans defense?
The Packers are going to have to find a way to run the football. I think that goes without saying. I mean, look, there's 2 choices here. Either Jordan Love is out again and you're going with Malik Willis, or Jordan Love is limited, still plays, but you don't want to test him all that much if you could help it. And either way, that means you've got to find a way to run the football. You've got even though their pass defense is ranked number 1, their rush defense is 10th in the league. Mm-hmm. You've got to find a way to move the football on the ground. Yeah, you want to pass it. You need to be maybe even a little bit more complimentary with the pass than you were a week ago, but you got to find a way to run the football. And to me, that means that the Packers offensive line has to do as good a job as they did in the first 3 quarters last week at opening holes against that Tennessee defense.
And again, where the Titans defense is good, where you sometimes look at yards, it's so common in the NFL. I mean, we saw it last year. The Packers are technically a top 10 passing defense, but they didn't have that look. And usually points are the name of the game when it comes to being a good NFL defense. But the Titans being the 1st overall total defense, that's not a fluke. And again, it's because their offense, Will Levis threw a terrible pick 6 in the opening loss at Chicago. The special teams had a punt that was blocked that went for a touchdown. The defense really only allowed 10 points. They allowed 10 points in that opening win. And then against the Jets on Sunday, where they lost at home by 7 points, giving up 24 in that game as well. 21 of those points, you could say, were on the defense. The Jets had some good drives. They were clicking later. But 3 of those points came off of a block punt as well, where it was a short field for the Jets offense, and they were able to cash in with 3 points. And that's been the difference where this Titans defense is not the reason they're 0-2. It's far from the reason they're 0-2. They're the reason they're competitive in games right now. Now, the big thing, too, where I'm looking at is if the Titans, they're going to focus on shutting down the run, which you thought the Colts would do, obviously, on Sunday with Malik Willis in there. But the Titans have the guys who could do that. And I'm talking about Harold Landry, who's got 3 sacks this year, among sack leaders early on this season. Jeffrey Simmons on the D-line is an absolute animal, too. He's a stud. That guy is an absolute tone setter when it comes to that Titans front. There's a reason why the Titans defensive front has a reputation for being nasty and tough. Jeffrey Simmons is the reason, and I hope Elton Jenkins plays because that's the matchup that I'm looking forward to is Elton Jenkins against Jeffrey Simmons, 2 really, really good football players.
Yeah, you talk about a game within a game. You want to focus in on that matchup, and it should be very entertaining. If Jenkins holds his own, the Packers should be able to move the football on the ground.
And with Elton Jenkins, too, Elton Jenkins and Zach Tom are 2 of the lone players, 2 of very few offensive linemen in the NFL who haven't allowed a pressure this year. Those guys are playing at all pro levels right now. They are outstanding. And you're going to need Zach Tom against Harold Landry. You're going to need Rasheed Walker against Harold Landry as well. And then on the back end too, you got a guy at corner in L'Jarius Sneed who's a Super Bowl champion and who's a very good football player at cornerback. He's going to be hard to throw, and you got to throw away from him. The Packers, I feel like they really got to spread the field on offense quite a bit. They can't just stick to the run game. It's got to be a little more balanced coming up on Sunday. They really got to spread the field against this Titans defensive attack.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I said they should pass a little bit more than they did a week ago. You mentioned need to spread the ball out. The good thing is that whoever the quarterback is, you have a lot of options to throw to, whether it's Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave, whether it's Christian Watson, who really hasn't broken out yet this year, Jaden Reed, if he's ready to go, Romeo Dobbs. You've got so many different weapons. Dontavian Wicks had a great game last week. You've got choices, and don't forget Josh Jacobs can catch passes out of the backfield as well. There's no need to focus in on one receiver or, go up against Sneed, who is their best defender. You've got lots of other options in theory as to where you could throw the football.
And a few additional stats regarding the Packers and the Titans. The Packers offensive line has only allowed 2 sacks so far, 2 games into the season. That's tied for fewest in the NFL. Now, they've only had 49 pass attempts because they didn't have Jordan Love for game 2. That's tied for 5th fewest in the NFL, but still pretty efficient, though, up front. And then Tennessee's defense, their defense is allowing a 77.6 opposing passer rating. That's 11th best in football. And opposing completion percentage, 54.2%. That is second in the NFL. And yeah, they were going against Caleb Williams, who hasn't really seemed to click in that so far in the young season of his rookie year for the Chicago Bears. But Aaron Rodgers, though, they still made it kind of tough for him as well.
Yeah, and look, this is not an easy assignment. This defense, and here's the thing that I think makes it tougher for the Packers. This is a better defense and a better run defense than what they saw a week ago against the Colts.
Yeah, for sure. And it's going to be, and going to Nashville too, where it's somewhere that is not very kind to the Green Bay Packers historically. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how the Packers offense adjusted. It's supposed to be very, very hot in the 90s, supposedly coming up this weekend in Nashville. Now let's switch it up, though. The Tennessee offense and the Green Bay defense. Tennessee's total offense tied for 24th overall in the NFL this year. Green Bay's total defense, 28th in the NFL this year. And if you break it down further, Tennessee's offense, they're scoring about 17 points a game. That's 24th in the league. 137 passing yards a game. That's 27th. 135 rushing yards a game. That's 13th. So been a pretty balanced attack. Green Bay's defense, they're allowing 22 points a game. That's tied for 3rd worst currently, but a very good performance against the Colts where they only allowed 10 points in that game. 266 passing yards per game allowed. That's 6th worst in football. 144 rushing yards a game. That's 10th worst allowed so far this year. But I will say, Gil, it seems like the progress is definitely being made in Jeff Hafley's new scheme. They took a big, giant step against the Colts in week 2 after that week 1 loss in Brazil against a good Philadelphia Eagles team. But what's the matchup that you're looking forward to watching between a Titans offense that has really struggled protecting the quarterback and a Green Bay defense that really hasn't had the pass rush sack party that we're anticipating? Maybe things change this weekend.
I think they do, and the matchup I'm looking at is Rashawn Gary of the Packers against Nicholas Petit-Frere of the Tennessee Titans. He has been vulnerable. He has given up more pressures, according to Pro Football Focus, than any other offensive tackle who has enough reps to qualify. And you just get the feeling, since Will Levis is not one of those quarterbacks, it's not that he's not mobile. He's no Lynn Dickey back there. But at the same time, he's not like Anthony Richardson or Jalen Hurts, a guy who's a threat to beat you with his legs on a consistent basis. I get the feeling there'll be a little bit more emphasis on getting after the quarterback and a little less emphasis on keeping in your rush lanes this week. And look, when Will Levis gets pressured, he has shown he can make some pretty ugly mistakes. He's already lost 2 fumbles. He's already thrown 3 picks. You've got a very vulnerable guy in Nicholas Petit-Frere, and then you have Rashawn Gary, who is just chomping at the bit to get going. I think he may have a multiple sack game against this Tennessee Titans offensive line.
This feels like a coming out party for the Packers defensive front, because the first 2 weeks of the year, they played against a Philadelphia Eagles offensive line that is very good. That with Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens and Johnson, Lane Johnson, and just a very stacked offensive line. Then you go against the Indianapolis Colts the next week, where Bernard Ryman and Braden Smith and Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, very good offensive line. This offensive line in general for the Tennessee Titans, they've struggled. And if you're watching with us on YouTube, thank you for watching with us. I also mentioned J.C. Latham, the left tackle, where Nicholas Petit-Frere has not been very good at right tackle. He's allowing a lot of pressures, a lot more pressures than you like if you're the Tennessee Titans. But J.C. Latham has been much better. The Oak Creek, Wisconsin native. He was the Titans' first-round pick in April, number 7 overall. He has allowed 6 pressures in his first 2 games. Not very good. And no Packer has allowed more than, 3 or 4 pressures in the first 2 games. And J.C. Latham is statistically one of the better offensive linemen for the Tennessee Titans right now. It's unhealthy what's going on right now with the Tennessee Titans, where Will Levis is making horrible decisions with the football. Anyone who watches football, they'll be able to see where Will Levis has made essentially the blooper reel a little more than not, because he's just made some terrible decisions with the football. But it goes hand in hand with the offensive line not being able to protect him and him trying to make a play and trying to make something happen. But it goes from bad to worse. It seems like with Will Levis, it's just a really bad combination right now. And then another matchup, Gil, that I want to talk about too, is left guard Peter Skoronski, another former first-round pick by the Titans, against Devontae Wyatt and Kenny Clark. And Devontae Wyatt seems like the guy who has really benefited the most on the defensive line from the new scheme. He seems to be having a really good start to the year. Kenny Clark's been pretty quiet, but Peter Skoronski has struggled as well. I feel like this is a game that Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt could feast as well.
Yeah, they should be able to bounce back. And I get the feeling we'll also see a lot of stunts in this game to free people up, maybe a little more blitzing than we saw in the first couple of games. And you got to mention this, Peter Skoronski, a bit of a Packer legacy because his grandfather played for the Packers during the Lombardi era.
I knew you'd know about that because I wasn't going to ask trivia about that. I knew you would. I knew you would know.
You knew.
Yeah, and you knew that I knew. But this is a huge opportunity for the Packers defense just to really rack up the sack numbers that they're hoping to get. And Rashawn Gary, remember, as disruptive as a force as he is at defensive end, he's never had 10 sacks in a year. This is a game where he could have multiple sacks and really climb up the charts pretty quickly. He's got 1 in the first 2 games. Some other stats and numbers, though, as well. Green Bay's defense, they're allowing a 61.0 opposer passer rating. That's actually 3rd best in football. And the Titans, their defense, they are 2nd overall in opposing completion percentage. Packers are right behind them at 3rd, 54.4%. Green Bay's defense, only 3 sacks this year. That's tied for 4th fewest in the NFL. But again, Tennessee's offensive line has struggled mightily. They've allowed 7 sacks up front this year. That's tied for 5th most in the league. Now, the Tennessee offense, they're going to rely on Tony Pollard, and I would too if I were head coach Brian Callahan. They're averaging 5 yards per carry this year. That's 10th in the NFL, while the Packers are allowing opposing rushers to rush for 5.1 yards per carry. That's tied for 5th worst in the NFL. That's where if the Packers don't show up the run defense, this game could be a lot tighter than anticipated.
Yeah, and look, the run defense has been something that has been a problem for the Packers for a few years now. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, if the quarterback isn't running for a lot of yards, the numbers look a little better. And then I think last week also, they gave up a lot of rushing yards, but it was after they were already ahead in that game. So it wasn't as much of a problem as it was against the Eagles in week 1 when Saquon Barkley really beat them badly. Let's hope that they can at least settle down and force those 2nd and 3rd and longs for the Tennessee Titans.
And again, the Packers defense, we already talked about it earlier, where they have 5 interceptions as a unit so far this year. They had 7 all of last year under Joe Barry. And it always seemed like Joe Barry had the best game plans and the defense played the best when they were going against the better quarterbacks. They had a great game plan against Patrick Mahomes last year. They played Brock Purdy pretty well. They played Jared Goff in the second game pretty well when they faced the Lions. But then it was the mid to below mid quarterbacks where they struggled.
Tommy DeVito.
Tommy DeVito was one of them. Baker Mayfield, who's actually been very good. He's been a higher level quarterback than what we give him. Bryce Young had his best NFL game against the Green Bay Packers, a guy who just got benched down in Carolina. And you just hope with Will Levis, he's probably been, outside of Bryce Young, he's probably been the worst quarterback in football this year. He's made so many mistakes, and you hope that the Packers can really get to him and force him to make a ton of mistakes coming up on Sunday. It's prime. The opportunity is prime for him. They've made Jalen Hurts a little flustered. They made Anthony Richardson very flustered in the last game. There's a lot of good things that could happen for the Packer defense, but they got to go do it. And speaking of turnovers so far, we're going to just go over some numbers real quick. Turnover ratio this year, the Packers +4, and that's second in the NFL, +4 overall, 6 takeaways, only 2 giveaways. The Titans -4 in the turnover ratio. That's worst in football. A lot of that has to do with Will Levis, who we were just talking about. Offense and defensive penalties. Green Bay's offense, 16 penalties, tied for 7th most in football, but they had 10 in the first game. They had 6 in the second game. So, hey, baby steps, but it's progress. And defensively, 10 total penalties. That's tied for 6th fewest. They had 10 in that opener against the Eagles in Brazil, 0 against the Colts in game 2. Huge step forward. Tennessee's offense, 13 penalties this year. That's right in the middle of the league. 14 penalties on defense. That's tied for 10th most. And then third down, the money down, Gil. Green Bay's offense was so good on third down on Sunday, even without Jordan Love. 46.4% third down conversion rate so far this year. That's 6th best in the NFL. Defensively, 26.1%, tied for 6th best. Tennessee's offense, well, not very good on third down either. 30.8% on offense, 9th worst in football. Tennessee's defense, though, 28% opposing third down conversion rate. That's 9th best in football. So a lot of numbers that I just threw out there, Gil, right now. And that's something where if the trend continues, I mean, I feel like the Packers shouldn't have any problem on Sunday.
I'm not willing to go that far, but I think the Packers have a good chance to pull off the win.
Essentially, if the stats hold true, that's what I'm getting at. Where if the stats hold true,
still a small sample size.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very small sample size. It's not a good look right now for the Titans, but again, very small sample size. Some injuries to report real quick for the Titans as well. Defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons, who we were talking about, and cornerback L'Jarius Sneed. They both did not practice on Wednesday, but it was only veteran rest, so expect to see them coming up this weekend. Also, running back Tyjae Spears did not practice on Wednesday with an ankle injury. No other injuries noted by the Titans so far this week in practice. Gil, Titans are 0-2. The Packers are 1-1. If the Packers win, why do they win and become 2-1 after Sunday?
They win the turnover battle. I think that is the biggest single thing that I could think of. If they win the turnover battle, I don't think they lose this football game.
I think it's 2 things. First, control the clock again. If you can control the clock again and keep the offense on the field, I don't care who's starting at quarterback. That's a good recipe for a win, especially against a team like Tennessee, who has struggled quite a bit, and a good defense, too. If you can keep that defense out there, they're going to get tighter as the game goes on. Secondly, limit Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard has been the problem with the Tennessee Titans offense. He's been far from the problem. He's been the only reason that they've actually been competitive this year, in my opinion. Limit Tony Pollard. Jonathan Taylor did way too much on Sunday. Saquon Barkley did way too much in game 1. Limit Tony Pollard. And Gil, even though the Titans are 0-2, they've been very close to being a 2-0 team, maybe a 1-1 team. Why did the Packers lose on Sunday?
If they can't run the football effectively, they're going to be in trouble. There could be a ripple effect from that. You don't want Malik Willis to throw 30-plus times a game. And if he's playing through an injury, you don't want Jordan Love to throw too often either. You got to be able to run the football, and you can't turn the ball over.
If they win, if the Titans win and the Packers lose, it's going to be because the Titans, Will Levis got through his head not to stop throwing the ball away in key situations and throwing it right to the defense and making horrible decisions. If they don't have any turnovers, if the offensive line plays a clean game for Tennessee, and again, it's no turnovers for Tennessee, and that's why the Packers lose. And if they can't contain Tony Pollard, too, it's going to come down to Tony Pollard. He's going to be the reason that the Titans win or lose on Sunday coming up. Gil, with that all being said, what is your prediction for Sunday's tilt in the Music City?
Well, I think the Packers will find a way to win this game. It may not be artistic again. It may not be the prettiest win, but I think the Packers 23, Titans 17, a very encouraging road win.
Now, with this prediction, I'm going to assume that Jordan Love doesn't play on Sunday. I think the Packers medical staff is going to be overly cautious, and they're just going to sit him out. And I think whatever the Packers medical staff decides, I'm cool with, mainly because they got that win in week 2. With that being said, the Packers don't play very well in Nashville. They never have. And the Titans, I feel like they've been so close these first 2 weeks. I feel like this is the week that they figure it out. They force Malik Willis to throw the ball a lot and limit the Packers' ground game. I think it's a slugfest, but I think the Titans get their first win of the year. I think they win 17-13. Malik Willis and the Packers, it's not going to be enough. And I think the Titans, they're due for one because it's not like they're getting blown out like the Carolina Panthers are right now. They're very close. And I feel like they find a way, especially if Malik Willis instead of Jordan Love does start.
It's a good revenge game for Malik Willis. We'll see if he can get it. And never underestimate the desperation of an 0-2 team also, I think.
And you know what? I keep picking against the Packers, and I just hope – my whole thought is and my whole hope that they prove me wrong, that they continue to prove me wrong and they win in spite of me. Please, in spite of Sean. Do it for me, Green Bay. Just spite me. I don't care. You're the one organization, you're the one team in my life where I want you to win in spite of. That's the one organization in my entire life. But Gil, with that all being said, before we get to some trivia, what articles do you have coming up on Cheesehead TV, Packers Post? You're probably going to be on your toes quite a bit, waiting to see the progress that Jordan Love makes in practice this week.
Yeah, focusing this week on, first of all, some of the position battles that have carried over into the regular season. You usually think those are over once the season starts, but I focused in on 5 that are still ongoing here after 2 games, and just looking ahead at some of the matchups also as well for Sunday's game against the Titans.
Seems like the Packers are rotating a lot more guys on the offensive line and in the defensive secondary than in times past, and I don't know if that's necessarily a talent issue or if it's just a matter of like, hey, they got so much talent that they want these guys to get in. They want certain guys to rotate in and get rest. But looking forward to reading that. Again, cheeseheadtv.com, packerspost.com. Go check out Gil's stuff. You'll be happier for it in the end. Gil, you ready for some trivia?
Let's go for it.
All right. Well, last week the Packers defeated the Colts for the first time in 16 years. Well, as we mentioned earlier, Green Bay, they never won a game at Nashville against the Titans in their franchise history. All time, they're 0-3 in Nashville. The last time the Packers played the Titans in Tennessee was in 2016, and it was ugly. I remember it very well. Titans won that game 47-25. Gil, who were the 2 leading receivers in the Packers' previous game at Tennessee in 2016?
The 2 leading receivers in 2017, you said?
2016.
2016. 2016, you got to think Jordy Nelson.
Jordy Nelson was one of them. Yeah, and this is for the Titans and the Packers. This is as a whole.
Okay.
Jordy Nelson was the second leading receiver that day.
In yards or in catches?
In yards.
In yards. If you're talking about that year, 2016, I got to go with Tay.
Davante Adams. You got it. It's Davante Adams and Jordy Nelson. Davante had 156 receiving yards. Jordy Nelson had 126 receiving yards in that game. They were the 2 leading receivers overall. Titans tight end Delaney Walker led the Titans in receiving with 124 yards. Veteran running back DeMarco Murray, now retired running back DeMarco Murray, dominated the ground game with 123 rushing yards for the Titans that day. And you'd think seeing those numbers with Davante and Jordy racking up for nearly 300 yards receiving that they would have dominated this game. But Green Bay turned the ball over 3 times and allowed 5 sacks that afternoon in Nashville. Again, a very, very ugly game. I remember it very well. I was living in Minnesota at the time, and I was frustrated. The Packers dropped to 4-5. And that was a couple weeks away then from when they almost ran the table, when they started the run the table run in 2016.
Well, at least that season ended on a high note, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. And they were just so beat up, though, in that final game in Atlanta where they ran, as Mike McCarthy called it, they ran into a buzzsaw. I think LaTroy Guion was playing right guard because they were so limited in offensive line. LaTroy Guion, who was a defensive tackle because they were literally so beat up on the O-line, they had no bodies, so they had to put a D tackle in there. But Packers Titans this weekend, heading to Broadway South in Rocky Top, Tennessee, looking for their first ever win in Nashville against the 0-2 Titans, who are hungry for their first win of the year. Been very close the first 2 weeks. Hopefully it doesn't come in week 3. Packers looking to advance to 2-1 on the 2024 season. Kickoff from the Music City scheduled for noon Central Time, 1 p.m. over in the Eastern time zone where Gil's at, 11 a.m. Mountain Time where I'm going to be for a wedding this weekend. 10 a.m. Pacific time, where my brother-in-law is studying. He's doing grad school. He's doing stuff that's way beyond our brain power, Gil. At 7 a.m. Hawaiian time, where, hey, I'm all about being mahalo out there, and that's my favorite place to go. Gil, let's get the Packers started off on the right foot on the road. Let's get that first win in Rocky Top, Tennessee, and hey, let's get that first win ever in Nashville.
Yeah, would love to see it, and let's hope that this is the week. Well, that's it for today. We'll be right back here next week. Follow us on Twitter at Packers on all things Packers, or to ask us questions. Or you can email us at gbpackerssean@gmail.com. Make sure you're subscribed to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to everyone who was watching live on YouTube, and a big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show. Thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.